Welcome back to another episode of Uninsured Ankles Podcast, Hoopheads. Today's a big day. The NBA playoff picture has been established. I'm your host tonight, Josh Barton. Joining me is Jordan Stratton. No Haley Everett, no Nick Swanson. But we got plenty of things to talk about, Jordan. I'm going to give you the floor in a minute to give us a quick NCAA recap that I know nothing about. But let me ask you this. First round series, Lakers, Timberwolves. Are you excited to see your Lakers play your favorite player in the NBA, Rudy Gobert?
Look, I don't even know how the Timberwolves are going to be able to use Rudy Gobert in that series because the Lakers have been playing small ball for the last month and a half, and Rudy is not enough of an offensive threat against a smaller defender to warrant having him on the court. So, yeah, they're going to tear him apart or he's going to have to sit. So, pick your poison, coaching staff. I think it was probably the best way that madness could have shaken out for the Lakers, potentially with the exception of getting to play the Nuggets. But of all the teams that they had a chance of playing in that 3-6 matchup, the Wolves were definitely the team that I was kind of hoping that they would get to
Mhm.
play, and they avoided having to play the Clippers and OKC, the two hottest teams in the league, until the conference finals.
Yeah,
I'm here for it.
yeah. The Battle of LA is coming, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me about this Final Four I know nothing about. Apparently Cooper Flag didn't live up to the hype. Sad day
Uh,
for my Cooper Flag bandwagon dumb.
I wouldn't even say that he didn't live up to the hype. Honestly, the moral of the story for the whole Final Four is, I think we were really quick to note that there were no Cinderella stories out of the first couple rounds. That must mean that, college basketball is terrible and the transfer portal's ruining everything. And I think there was a bit of an overreaction to some of that going down in the first round. Obviously, upsets are fun, but at the end of the day, we also just want to watch good basketball and have truly like the best team win it all. And that was probably the best Final Four, for sure, the best Final Four I've seen recently, and even going back into the Elite Eight games as well. It was really good basketball. We saw teams that were really evenly matched. The Final Four, we had three different double-digit comebacks. So, really fun games to watch. Uh, really tough losses for the teams that had the big leads and lost them, i.e., Duke, i.e., Auburn, i.e., Houston in the final. So it made for fun television, and yeah, I think we all may have overreacted a little bit to our lack of Cinderellas in the first round. One data point doth not make a trend. We saw a very fun Final Four, and I'm already counting down the days till next Christmas. I mean, March Madness.
To kind of go off of our last pod from that when we talked about the NCAA, I've seen a lot of stuff on a Walter Clayton Jr. Not quite Cinderella being at Florida, but started his college career at Iona.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what do you think his ceiling is in the NBA? Because some people have been whiling online saying he's the next Dame, the next Steph, and I don't know if I see that.
No, I don't think I see that either. He's a fantastic player. I think his build and play style is much more indicative of a Jamal Murray.
Mm,
He's like 6'4" and a little bit stocky, so he's got some muscle to throw around when he starts driving to the basket. He's not like blazing fast, but he knows how to use his body and has good control when he's going to the hoop, and can he they ran a bunch of dribble handoff options for him
mm.
at Florida, which reminded me a little bit of our dynamic duo of Joker and Murray in Denver. So I think we could see him hit that kind of a ceiling. Obviously, the talent depth in the league is ridiculous, so hitting that ceiling will be very difficult. But the possibilities there.
So what I'm hearing is that whoever drafts Derek Queen, aka Mini Baby Jokic, they should also draft Mini Baby Jamal Murray. Does that
That's
sound right?
correct. Yes. And they will have the best G League team in the NBA.
Well, that counts for something. Any other NCAA thoughts, comments you have before we get into the real matters at hand?
Uh, Man, John Shire, teach your guys how to run an inbounds play against a full court press. There was it's pretty much the only reason they lost that game against Houston is they couldn't get the ball in against a full court press. Not fully John Shire's fault. That's mostly a joke. They also need to learn how to throw accurate passes. So they I think they really should have been the ones to take the whole thing home. They looked like the most dominant team throughout the tournament, and they kind of crumbled under the pressure of a really strong Houston defense.
All right, to the NBA and the matters at hand. So today was the last day of the regular season. Really exciting Clippers Warriors game. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it, but came down to the wire, win to overtime. Buddy Hield got a great look to tie it up, and we saw bad Buddy Hield because I don't even think that hit rim. It hit the bottom of the backboard. Clippers prevail. Leaves us with a 4-5 matchup of Denver and the Clippers. You mentioned earlier the Lakers and Wolves are in the 3-6 matchup. Then, of course, we have Oklahoma City and Houston at 1 and 2, playing some combination of Golden State and Memphis at 2, and then possibly Sacramento or Dallas in the 8 seed. Um, I would be shocked if Dallas made the 8 seed. Um, for many reasons. But I don't know if Memphis is necessarily penciled in there. We can get into that in a minute. But to recap the Eastern standings, and they've already been set in stone for like a week now. We have the Cavaliers and Celtics 1-2 up top in the East. We have an interesting 3-6 with New York and Detroit. Uh, Also interesting in a repeat of last year, Indiana and Milwaukee going against each other. And then 7-8 is Orlando and Atlanta. My money is on Atlanta to play the Celtics in a series that will go way longer than it should. But something tells me it's going to be Boston, Atlanta for like the second or third year in a row. Then Orlando, Chicago, or Miami will be the 8 seed. That is going to be rough watching for whoever tunes into Cleveland versus that 8 seed. So, Jordan, hit me with your most exciting first round series that you are geared up and you are locked into.
Well, I feel obligated to take one of the Western Conference matchups, given how heated the standings were down the stretch of the
Hmm.
season. We finished with what was it, four different 50 win teams, maybe five. No, it was five 50 win teams, which is unheard of.
Hmm.
Not to mention you have two other teams sitting at 49 and 48 wins respectively too. So one of the most competitive Western conferences we've ever had. It might be the most competitive ever in terms of the spread of the two through the eight. But I think, and obviously this isn't set yet, but if we could get a Warriors versus Oklahoma City first round matchup, I think
Mm.
that would be the matchup that I'd be looking forward to watching the most. Um, that being said, since that matchup isn't set in stone yet, the the Clippers Nuggets matchup will be really interesting to see if Joker can take it to the next level and kind of just force this team through the hottest team in the NBA right now. I
Hmm.
will say the Clippers 14 and 2 record is not against necessarily the best competition. They had one of the easier schedules coming down the back stretch of the season, but they did beat the Cavs in there. Their two
Hmm.
losses were to the Cavs and the Thunder, respectively, but they were close games too. So with Zoo playing extremely well, averaging like 20 and 14 since the All Star break, Kawhi averaging 24, 25 over his last 15-ish games, and James kind of settling into the more point guard position. They've got a shot to make a run. and we'll see how they match up with the maybe MVP.
Hmm. Stay tuned for later. I'm glad you mentioned that one, and that was one of the ones I was debating on picking, depending on where you went. Really interesting juxtaposition of teams, not necessarily going opposite directions, but the vibes are definitely going opposite
Yeah.
directions. I mean, the Nuggets firing Michael Malone, their head coach, and Calvin Booth, their president of basketball operations or the general manager. I don't remember what his title is. 3 games left into the season is unprecedented in NBA history for a team that won the championship 2 years ago. It's just bizarre.
I mean, we
Um,
we thought it was crazy when Memphis fired their coach like 2 weeks ago.
and that's the same Memphis team that hasn't beat any good teams. Like their 48 wins are kind of an aberration because they just beat bad teams, which a part of being good teams is you beat the bad teams. Like the Celtics have not as much this year, but in the past have frustratingly been that team that, oh, we'll beat all of the top teams and then drop games to the Hornets or, the Wizards, which
Or the Lakers last year when both AD and LeBron were hurt.
yeah, and to tie it back to the Nuggets went 0-2 against the Washington Wizards this year, which was right before Michael Malone and Calvin Booth got fired. So maybe that was why. But you look at it, and they fired their coach and general manager, yet they still got the 4 seed. They still had 50 wins. They have, if not the MVP, unanimously the best player in basketball. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. And yet there's so much uncertainty going to the playoffs. And then on the other side, yeah, the Clippers' schedule was soft, but they are playing great basketball. They are deep. Like everyone's super positive. Now, Kawhi Leonard's health going into a playoff series is not something I would gamble with. But I thought about the Clippers, and then I thought of every year how Kawhi Leonard looks amazing and he can't finish a series. So we'll see. But that's going to be a really interesting series. Jamal Murray's not 100%. And if Jamal Murray's not 100%, I don't think the Nuggets have a chance because you mentioned Zubac and what he's doing offensively. He's also one of, the best players, best defensive players in the NBA, possibly first team all defense. And, you know, that's a tough matchup, as tough as it gets for Nikola Jokic. That's one of the more difficult matchups for Jokic. So that's going to be a really
Zoo's a
interesting
big
series.
boy.
Yeah, and you mentioned too that like Harden and Kawhi. You also have Norm Powell. The Nuggets aren't exactly littered with defensive stoppers. They start Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. Last time I checked, there is no D in Michael Porter Jr. So that will be a
And that's a
very tough
long
series.
name.
I guess there's a yeah, there is actually is no D. And I thought about if you spelled out junior and just didn't abbreviate it, but no, that's not even close. My pick for the most interesting first round series, there's a lot in the Western Conference for sure. There's going to be a lot of late nights in the Josh household, staying up watching the Western Conference playoffs on the East Coast because there's not a series that isn't interesting. It's not set. You mentioned the Warriors potentially playing the Thunder. I think the Warriors potentially playing Houston is super interesting. Um, I want as much Amen Thompson in my life as I can, and he held Steph Curry to 3 points recently. It'll be interesting to see what he could do over an entire series. The Ime Udoka got into it with Steph Curry, so there's some bad blood there. The Rockets are also super young, and I wonder how they would do in a playoff series against a team like Golden State that is about as established with playoff experience as you can get, at least at the top half of their roster. But that would be an
Bottom
interesting
half's a
one.
little raw, but it's all good.
The bottom half's a little raw, but between Draymond and Steph and Jimmy and Looney and some of those guys, like the core, they've got plenty of experience. My interesting first round matchup is New York versus Detroit. And here's why. I think New York is fake. And I came into the season believing in the New York Knicks. I like Karl Anthony Towns going to New York. Like the whole makeup of the team is has been fun. I don't trust that team.
And they've stayed fairly healthy too, which has been relatively surprising. With the exception of a few what was it, 5 to 10 games missed by Brunson, they've been fairly healthy. He says
Yeah.
aggressively knocking on wood.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's exactly where I was going. Brunson missed time recently,
Mm-hmm.
and Detroit is bringing the bad boys back, whether you want to like it or not. And they're going to beat you up. They're going to, get into it with you. And Jalen Brunson, a small guard coming off of injury, I have a little bit of a concern for the burden that he's going to shoulder. Karl Anthony Towns was good last year in the playoffs, but previous years of Karl Anthony Towns was not good in the playoffs, almost hilariously bad in the playoffs. And I think Detroit's for real. I think they are very well coached, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And they are trending in the right direction, whereas I just the Knicks thing just I have a feeling that I don't believe it. It kind of reminds me of Milwaukee last year, and specifically Milwaukee in the Indiana matchup. This Detroit matchup for New York is going to be tough, and I'll be interested to see how it plays out.
There's definitely a whole lot of toughness on that Detroit team that feels like it's been lacking a little bit in New York, which is kind of surprising because that group had been known for their toughness until Cat showed up. Hmm, surprising. But you know, maybe maybe they'll take it to Detroit. Maybe Detroit will give them a big helping of the beef stew.
Yeah. Speaking of beef stew, over under games before an ejection. Two? Is that where we're setting the line at?
Oh, I thought you were about to say over under number of games ejected, and I was going to go with two. So since they've got home court in New York, I gotta say I don't think he lets himself get thrown out in the first 2 games, and
Hmm.
then I think we see an ejection game 3 when he can get the crowd hyped up behind him.
Yeah. When this matchup got set, I thought back to the villain that Trey Young became in New York, and I was like, Isaiah Thomas is going, or sorry, not Isaiah Thomas, Isaiah Stewart is basically going to be Bane or Joker, like the ultimate villain that you can have in New York, because that guy is on one all the time, and I love it.
His fuse stays lit.
It stays lit and it stays short. All right. So now that the season has officially wrapped up, it is awards time. We're going to start with kind of the most disappointing race out there, if you can even call it race. And that's the Rookie of the Year. I think the top probably two candidates are Stefan Castle and Zachary Richese. Uh, there's also a
Don't you
number
mean
of guys.
Ricochet?
Reese. My French is lacking a little bit tonight.
Ooh,
Um,
Ricochet.
Haley somewhere. Haley's going to hear this and just shed a little tear and blow up the group chat. So Haley, my apologies. Reese. There we go. Um, there's also a few other guys to mention who I don't think are quite there. Zach Edey, Jalen Wells. Uh, Prayers up for Jalen Wells. That was a scary fall
Facts.
against Charlotte. When you get taken to the hospital immediately after the fall, that is not good. But glad it was only a broken wrist. Hate that he'll miss the playoffs, but glad he's okay. Maybe a little Matas Puzelas action for you, but probably a little too late in the season for him. Um, so, Jordan, I am going to be sticking up for my guy, Stefan Castle, because that's who I picked preseason for Rookie of the Year. And I will give you the floor on Zachary Risachet for Rookie of the
Zach.
Year. Zach, tell me why
Yeah.
Zach should be Rookie of the Year.
Well, like you said, this is not a particularly exciting matchup between these two players. I think Castle has had a great back half to the season. I think my main argument for Zach is the fact that he has had a pretty consistent role the entire year and has fit into that role pretty well. Not the most efficient first year, but his from day one to or for game one to game 82, his defense has gotten a lot better. He
Mm,
had you could see the bones of it at the beginning of the season, and you have seen him start to fulfill the potential on that end of the floor down the back half of the season. He's also got the most 30-point games out of the rookie class this year, which is something to tip your cap to. Um, and frankly, for Castle, while he did have a great back half of the season, that was largely due to the fact that they had some serious injuries plaguing their team. And while he was decent in his role prior to those injuries happening, I don't think he was even in the conversation for rookie of the year at that point. So I don't necessarily think that just, I think his position is one where his stats kind of got inflated by default just because he was the next best option after a couple of their guards went down and
right.
Wemby went down. There's just a lot more minutes to go around once those injuries happened. So um, while the Hawks had those injuries as well, Zach's role on the team didn't really change because of those injuries. Whereas for Castle, it changed pretty drastically, and Zach was consistent in his output the whole season.
I think that's definitely the downside to Castle's case. We mentioned just a minute ago, the Hawks are potentially in the playoffs. They're in the play-in. Spurs are not. Now you can say, Eastern Conference versus Western Conference. Um, the the Hawks and the Spurs, only 6 wins difference. So it's not like the Hawks were this incredible, team that's on the
Right.
play-in. But he's been starting all year for a team that is in contention for the play-in and played in games that matter. And Castle's production had a dramatic uptick once the season stopped mattering.
Games
And
didn't
they said,
matter.
here you go, Steph, do whatever you want. What I would say, so just to kind of hit the numbers real quick, Reese Shea averaged 12 points, three rebounds, 1 assist a game. Castle was at 14 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists a game. Numbers upticked once Wemby went down and the season went to hell. But to me, Castle looked like a rookie of the year. And I feel like for some of the awards, this isn't the only one I will make that case on. Sometimes you just gotta feel it. And I think back to like Mike Miller winning rookie of the year, and that didn't feel like a rookie of the year. Stephon Castle feels like a rookie of the year. He's clearly the most dynamic with the ball. He's a great defender. He initiates a lot more possessions, whereas, Zach is just playing off a Trey. And, again, Trey Young is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. I will say that to anyone who will listen. There's a lot of Trey Young hate, but what he does offensively is elite, and he does not get the respect for it. So when you're playing with an elite offensive engine, you are going to get better looks. You're going to get, better opportunities, whereas Castle has the head to create it all. Um, and that's
The
about
the
it.
the counter I'll make there, and to kind of reemphasize the stats argument we're making, is if we took just the games that players started, the rookie of the year would be Dalton Connect. He's started like 4 games and he's averaging like 25. He started today and I think he dropped 28. And then there was a game a couple weeks ago when both Luka and LeBron were out and he dropped 31. So if we're gonna just evaluate based on the ability to produce when given opportunity, then Dalton connects the rookie of the year. And my prediction at the beginning of the season is a lock.
Yeah, I think Jared McCain had the rookie of the year locked up until he got hurt. He's
Right.
honestly, I'm making a half-baked argument for Castle just for sake of the award. But Jared McCain was really the guy who seemed like a rookie of the year. He was dynamic, he was productive, he was leading to wins, the few wins that Philadelphia got. And he was the rookie of the year. It would be interesting if we didn't have the games played requirement, if it would be a Malcolm Brogdon versus Joel Embiid type thing, with McCain going down so early. I think he only played like 31 games.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
if that. I don't even think he played that many.
but when he was on the court, he was very clearly the best rookie in the league.
Yeah.
Um, so I think if I was voting, I would probably give it to Castle, just because he was the most dynamic and he just feels like a rookie of the year. But honestly, I wouldn't be mad if Zach got it either. I feel like he's just as deserving.
Hey, look,
Disappointed rookie class,
yeah,
like
it's an underwhelming award for an underwhelming class. It's not much
yeah,
more you can say about it. Like, yes, Castle. I talked about Castle beginning of the season too. He definitely looked like the most dynamic player out on the court of the rookies. But yeah, the weakness of the games that he played in, I think, is going to hurt him.
I think long term, I'll just put this out there. I think Matas Buzelis might be the best player in this class, even Jared McCain considered. He's shown some legitimate flashes of, I don't know if you get to all-star level, but to like Mikal Bridges level,
Mm,
high level role player at least. Not obviously, Mikal Bridges isn't the comp, but that kind of like
right.
upper level, fringe level role player.
Yeah, I could see it. I've liked watching him down the stretch of the season with the Bulls. It's a fun team that they
Yeah.
got. So, freeing them up a little bit by losing Levine is probably going to be good long term for their player development. But yeah, they got some fun guys on that team.
Yeah.
I'm a Kobe White enjoyer. It's been fun to see him thrive too.
Yeah. Imagine that. You lose Zach Levine and your team gets better. Who would have thought that? If you're voting for rookie of the year, Jordan, real quick, who are you going with?
I'm gonna take Zach just
Fair.
because of his consistency.
Yeah. I like his potential long term as well. It'll be interesting to see what direction Atlanta goes, but I'm not mad about that. Next award to hit is Defensive Player of the Year. The candidates that we have are Draymond Green, who has manufactured his own Defensive Player of the Year case in kind of a wild, stunning turn of events. Dude has a podcast. He said I should be Defensive Player of the Year. He might be Defensive Player of the Year because of it. The power of media. And then we have Dyson Daniels. And then we also have the field. I think there's another few guys to talk about. Jaren Jackson Jr., Evan Mobley, I think, is in serious contention for it. Um, uh, Ivica Zubats, another name. OG Anunoby, probably not quite at that level. Your guy, Rudy Gobert, running. But if I'm voting for Defensive Player of the Year, I am arguing for Dyson Daniels. Dyson Daniels is averaging 3 steals a game. The last time someone averaged 3 steals a game, I was in diapers. I am an old man with 4 children now. That has been a long time for
Yeah,
someone to average 3 steals. And it's not just like Allen Iverson levels of steals. I recently saw where he passed Allen Iverson for the most steals in a season in this century.
right.
Not just like this decade, this century. 25 years in, Allen Iverson was a big gambler in a lot of ways, especially on the defensive end. I loved Allen Iverson as a kid, but that man was never in position to play defense. He was just gunning for every steal he could. Dyson Daniels, on the other hand, does not do that. He is the definition of clamps. It looks entirely miserable to have to dribble around Dyson Daniels because you just lose the ball. Uh, there's not really much upside to it. Like it doesn't matter who you are. The elite offensive players in this league who cook guys cannot dribble around Dyson Daniels. It is genuinely impressive. And the thing with defensive player of the year, we've gotten to the point where it's like it has to go to a big because bigs, are the focal point of defense, and rim protection is what gets you there. And that's fair, but I don't think you should penalize Dyson Daniels for being a wing when he's what he's doing is he's essentially a shutdown corner on the basketball court. Like there's a guy he is guarding. That guy is no longer an option on offense because he will most likely lose the ball if Dyson Daniels is guarding him. And in a world where Marcus Smart was the last guard to win Defensive Player of the Year, it feels like a travesty to not give serious consideration to Dyson Daniels as your Defensive Player of the Year when I watched every minute of Marcus Smart's Defensive Player of the Year season, and he was not doing what Dyson Daniels was doing.
No.
He was doing a lot of switching. He was doing a lot of flopping. He was doing a lot of diving on the floor. He was not locking dudes up the way Dyson Daniels has done this season. Um, I also like people will point to the fact that the Hawks are the 21st ranked defense in the NBA, and that's all well and good. Start a rookie, you start Trae Young, you start Clint Capella, who I just mentioned has the joint flexibility of a robot. Your defense is going to be bad, and I don't think that should be a penalty towards Dyson Daniels. You, my friend, would make the case for Draymond Green.
I am making the devil's advocate case for Draymond Green. I don't think it should come as any surprise to listeners that everyone that is on this podcast are big fans of the Great Barrier Thief. Because not
Yes.
only is he averaging 3 steals a game, but he also has done ridiculous things in the deflection department. The argument, and like you said, the main argument I think against him getting Defensive Player of the Year is the fact that the team defense as a whole doesn't appear to have seen a huge benefit from the stats that he's outputting. I think I agree with you that you can't fault Dyson for that. There are certainly some weak links on that team. But the argument for Draymond is that those weak links are just as potent on that Warriors team. And yet that Warriors team is one of the top 5 to 10 defenses in the league.
Hmm.
Steph is not an elite defender. Maybe better than Trae, but
He's
maybe.
definitely better than Trey.
Maybe. Trae actually had his least terrible defensive year this year. But point being, Steph, not an elite defender. Their stars saw a decent amount of time out of the game due to injury. The Warriors did.
Hmm.
And so we had lineups of Quentin Post and Moody and Podes, being the folks surrounding Draymond, and still they're a top team defensively in the league. Well, against the Western Conference, who have a ton of tough opponents. Their strength of schedule is really high, and yet their defense is one of the best in the league. I think we've seen it down this back stretch of the season because Draymond called it out, called the attention to himself. People have been just like taking a look at the things that he's been doing because he's not a counting stats defender. He's an IQ defender. His rotations, his forcing switches, because a huge part of NBA offense nowadays is finding mismatches.
Hmm.
And he knows this and he takes that to his advantage. He knows that when an offense is going to run a double screen for an offensive player, they're looking for a double switch onto the second screener's man. And we've seen Draymond be guarding the first screener and take the ball handler and go over the top of the second screen to make sure that the second switch doesn't happen, or literally grabbing, Puchinski by the jersey and throwing him back down on somebody else so that he can avoid the mismatch. So he's playing chess on the defensive end, and I think that's appealing to voters that maybe haven't seen that side of defense before.
Hmm.
Um, and I think they've also gotten used to the fact that steals are a counting stat that can be easily faked. And they
Hmm.
probably haven't watched a whole lot of Hawks games to know that Dyson's just different. he's getting those numbers, not just sitting in passing lanes and getting out of position. He's doing that by just picking pockets of the best players on planet Earth. I think Draymond has a good case because of how far he's taken his team defensively. Um, Given the lack of defensive stars around him, Draymond makes a decent case for himself.
It's always impressive watching Draymond play defense. The IQ piece is like for basketball nerds like us, it's just fascinating when, Jokic does this stuff, LeBron's done this stuff, like knowing what the other team's running, where you'll match up, like put the point guard on the center because there's going to be like this action that will ultimately get you the matchup that you want is always so impressive. It's also worth noting that Green is almost exclusively their center, and they're only big in lineups. If you look, Draymond Green is 6'6". This is a league full of gigantic men, like 7-footers who have easily 6 inches on him. 6'6" is the same height as Cade Cunningham, Jaylen Brown, shorter than Luka Doncic, guys who are guards. And Draymond is doing all this as a center at 6'6". And I think it's a compelling case for sure. I think being in the Western Conference, like honestly, once you mentioned that, that almost swayed my mind because the Western Conference is so tough. You're going up, we mentioned Jokic, the Thunder guys, you have Chet and you have Isaiah Hartenstein, both 7 feet tall. You have Şengün and now Steven Adams play together in Houston, and he's going up against those guys. You go on down the list. It's just it's a lot of big guys. It's a lot of responsibility on Draymond, and he's captaining that defense in a very impressive way. I also admittedly have a very strong anti-Warriors bias from 2022 that I have not gotten over yet. So my pick for Defensive Player of the Year is Dyson Daniels. Jordan?
I'm going to second your pick. Uh, we love Dyson Daniels here,
We
and
do.
the love will not stop today.
Yeah, for sure.
It might not stop with this award.
That's a good segue. We're going to do some quick hitters real quick before we hit the last two awards, which are definitely way better than the other two. I wanted to mention real quick in Defensive Player of the Year. I mentioned Jaren Jackson, and we were talking a few minutes ago about rebounding. I want to be a Jaren Jackson Jr. fan. I want to. I'm there. I do not understand for someone as big and athletic as him how he's that bad of a rebounder. It
It's
is
this. It's the
beyond
same thing we've
frustrating.
been dealing with Miles Turner for years. These guys are gigantic, and they average 6 boards. What are we doing?
Yeah, and at least with Miles Turner, he's a little like slight of build. Jaren Jackson Jr. is big, he is strong. He should be averaging like 12 rebounds a game easy. And I've got to dock him for that because rebounding has now become underrated. Rebounding is what stops the offensive possession.
Yeah,
Rebounding, like as much as you want to talk about Jokic not being the greatest like rim protector, Jokic is a great rebounder, so he is stopping offensive possessions by getting those defensive boards. Jaren Jackson Jr., I'm sorry, you get lots of blocks. You don't get rebounds. I'm penalizing you for that.
yeah.
Um,
Block it
but
right out of bounds and give it back to the offense.
maybe that's why Memphis only beats bad teams. But got a couple quick hitters real quick. Six man of the year. I will give you my pick, and this will come as no surprise given my shirt, my hat, my banner behind me. It's Peyton Pritchard. It's my guy. He deserves to be sixth man of the year. He is the leading scorer off the bench. He has been a great bench player for us this year. Has changed a bunch of games with his energy, with his defense. One of the best offensive rebounding guards in the NBA. It's one of the most fun things to watch how, Celtics shoot a lot of threes. The shot goes up. Who's coming out with the offensive rebound? 6'1" Peyton Pritchard. To me, it's easy. Six man of the year. It's got to go to Pritchard, leading scorer off the bench, like I mentioned. Should be unanimous. Do you agree?
I do. I think you do have to give it to him. I'm a big fan of the fast PP. One guy that I know we've as a group talked about quite a bit, and now I'm not 100% sure if he's even qualified. I don't know how many games he actually started, but DeAndre Hunter coming off the bench was probably just as impactful as Peyton Pritchard was. I don't know if he qualifies. I'd have to go and check the number of games he came off the bench. I think we see his role in Cleveland. That transition went really smoothly, which was fun to see. But he was making things happen for the Hawks. At least want to give him a little friendly nod. Not sure if he qualifies, but Pritchard is definitely he should win it. There isn't really a doubt in my mind either.
Yeah. Hunter qualifies. It's interesting for me with the midseason trade, how you kind of parse that with what he was doing as a six man in Atlanta versus kind of a seventh man in Cleveland.
Right,
I thought you were going to mention a Cavalier, but I thought you were going to mention Ty
Ty
Jerome.
Jerome. Yeah,
And one of the reasons why I think it's such an open and shut case for Pritchard is that Ty Jerome is ineligible for six man of the year, which is ridiculous. This minutes played thing. He's appeared in enough games, but he hasn't played enough minutes. So he is ineligible for the award. And I think that like Ty Jerome weakens DeAndre Hunter's case because,
yeah,
you have another stellar bench player coming in and who quite possibly might be better. Another name I want to mention, another guy we love, Naz Reid, basically having an identical season to what he did last year when he was six man of the year, has gotten almost no mention at all. And it goes to show with some of these awards, the narrative is what carries you on.
for sure. There was definitely a very positive aura around Nas Reed last season that seems to have worn off a little bit this season. And it feels like he has a lot of room to grow, especially with the skill set he has as a 7 footer. So
Mhm.
I don't mind him not getting it because I guess I'm part of the group that was a little disappointed in his lack of development, but from last season to this season, hopeful that he can turn himself into a fringe all-star kind of player.
Yeah, I think he'll definitely get there. I just think it's not going to be in Minnesota.
He's going to the
All right.
Lakers.
Hey, I'm a pseudo Lakers fan now that my guy Luca's there. I'm all
That's
for it.
that's just blasphemy. Well, you can't even have a Celtics championship banner hanging behind you and let those words come out of your mouth. I hope the internet just smites you.
Internet, get at me. I'm just saying, I love Luka Doncic. He can make the finals with the Lakers every year as long as they don't beat my Celtics. If the Celtics aren't there, they can win. If it's Celtics Lakers, the Celtics gotta win. Speaking of the Celtics, Celtics are one of a team that has one of the four locks for All NBA first team. That would be Jason Tatum. Those other locks are Giannis Antetokounmpo and the two guys that we'll talk about in just a couple minutes, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Nikola Jokic. Those guys are in pen. You can just skip the ballot. Those guys are going to be first team All NBA. I'm interested to hear who your fifth pick would be for that first team All NBA spot.
I'm not gonna lie, and look, I hate to be put into the Glazer camp, but I'm gonna take LeBron James as my fifth
I don't hate
first
it.
first team All NBA. The ridiculousness of what he's doing, I think, is hitting people more as
Hmm.
we've come down the backstretch of this season. Because not only is he 40 years old, but the fact that he has done this every single year is ridiculous. And not only is he top 15 in points per game, he's also top 15 in rebounds per game, or top 25 in rebounds per game. He's top 10 in assists. He's shooting 50% from the field. He's shooting a career high in 3-point percentage. He's drastically improved his free throw percentage from the last couple seasons. He's like number 6 or number 11 in player efficiency rating. So literally every major counting stat that we view as valuable, he's top 20.
Yeah.
And we can say that about probably only the other four people that we already listed. So I have a hard time giving it to anybody else.
Yeah. Numbers aside, he's just been like locked in this regular season in a way in which he hasn't been the last few years. He's definitely been coasting in the regular season, understandably so. He's been playing for almost your entire lifetime. which is just ridiculous, the longevity of his career and like what he's been doing. Man, I was thinking about LeBron James for that spot, and I definitely think it's deserving. I would not hate that at all. My pick would be Anthony Edwards. Do you know who leads the league in made 3-point field goals this year?
I do. That would be Anthony Edwards.
You would guess it would be Steph Curry, but it was not. It is Anthony Edwards. And that is crazy to me, given that we don't really think of Ant as a 3-point shooter. Ant's the crazy athlete who dunks on everyone and, does his like, you know, Jordan Jr. impression. But leading the league in 3-pointers with his player type is super impressive. And beyond that,
In a league that is just hoisting threes.
yeah, like everyone's shooting 3-pointers now, and including Mason Plumlee shot one today. I don't know if you saw it.
I did not.
Mason Plumlee, who formerly was a righty, now shoots his free throws left-handed. Decided that game 82 is a great time to shoot a lefty contested three from the corner that missed by about 12 feet. It
Oh,
was
that's
bad.
beautiful. I'm excited. I gotta go look this up.
It was 12 feet short and I think 3 feet to the right. It was nowhere
Wow.
close. But when you have
Amazing.
guys like Mason Plumlee shooting threes, you know the league has gone 3-point crazy.
Missoula
But
has done this to us
I mean, go back and watch games from the 80s. The NBA is in a much better place than it was 30,
100%.
40 years ago.
Yeah.
But on Anthony Edwards, Minnesota's had a weird year. And
Yeah.
he's kept that team afloat. Early on in the season, the Julius Randle experiment was not going well. I remember watching a Wolves game in December, and they had some of the worst spacing like I had ever seen. It was like pickup basketball. You had Randle trying to post, you had Gobert doing whatever it is he does on offense. DiVincenzo was struggling. Mike Conley is not quite LeBron James's age, but he's up there. And it was just Anthony Edwards seemingly going 1-on-5, shooting pull-up threes and keeping them afloat. And I would have to give it to him as the fifth first team All NBA guy. I think Steph also has a case for it, but Steph meets the criteria in the games played requirements, but Steph also had that 3-point game against Amen Thompson I mentioned recently, and it just feels like it wasn't a first team All NBA season for him.
Yeah, I would agree. That's one of the other couple guys that I was considering. And honestly, Steph's always kind of been the benchmark for where an all NBA first teamer needs to be. And it's not like he had terrible production this year. He had multiple 50-point games. I think he had two. And overall had a fantastic season. But I think we saw just a step of his decline begin, and so just comparing his production to LeBron's production and LeBron's impact on every possession of a game definitely is what swayed me to that pick. Like you said, he was far more locked in. We still probably had somewhere between 5 and 10. LeBron is here only in spirit type games. But
Hmm.
hey, he still scored his 10 points.
Yeah.
He's got that streak still alive. Yeah, I can point to that Chicago game that they lost on a half court buzzer beater as a game that you had LeBron just kind of kind of cruising.
Going through the motions.
Yeah. But that the number of those games was vastly decreased. I think it sets them up for better success in the playoffs because they weren't scrounging for wins down the stretch of the season just to barely make it in. They were able to, rest guys a couple different nights, take a little bit of time to let their guys heal from injuries, weren't forcing anything. And he still averaged 24, 8, and 8 for the season on 50 and 40 splits, which is just bonkers.
Yeah, and the way he transformed his game or transformed his role in the post Luca Lakers was extremely impressive. I mean, he's playing a lot of like, role man for Luca, in kind of like a beefed up Draymond Green role.
Yeah,
Um,
LeBron in a short role is going to be scary for
yeah,
anyone to defend in the playoffs.
yeah. I was talking to someone today, and I still can't believe the Mavs traded Luca, but that's just beside the point. Newcomer to the All NBA team. Who you got for the newbie on an All NBA team that you are most excited for?
I talked about this at the beginning of the season when we were doing our overs and unders. that I thought the Detroit Pistons had no shot of making their over prediction unless Cade Cunningham was an all NBA type player. Well, the Detroit Pistons are the sixth seed in the Eastern Conference, and Nick made a prediction that they were. We felt it was a bold prediction that they were going to just make the play in. They're a playoff team this season, and that is
Mhm.
fully because of Cade Cunningham. He should, and I think will, snag a third team spot. And I'm very happy to see that progression.
Yeah, I could see him making a second team spot, kind of Jaylen Brown style, where voters are kind of split with a couple guys and he sneaks in.
Right.
Um, and I mean, that was going to be my pick. I love Cade Cunningham. I love the Pistons. I want to shout out, I had a feeling you were going that direction. So I want to shout out Evan Mobley. I have historically not been an Evan Mobley guy. But I respect the hell out of Evan Mobley. He is a worker, and he has been instrumental to the Cavs this season. He's probably second team All NBA in pen at this point. For at least from everyone that I've listened to, they seem to have Mobley up there. He might have an outside shot at first team All NBA now that it's
Positionless.
positionless.
Yeah.
I don't know if I see that. I think like the brand appeal. I don't know if that's the right word or the aura. Let's say that's a word that the internet likes. The aura of guys like LeBron, Steph, and even Anthony Edwards probably elevate them over Evan Mobley. But I would say he's the guy who's the most responsible for the Cavs ascension this season. I remember after summer league, there was a story that came out where he did not have a good summer league and he was pushed around a lot. And the day summer league got done, he got in touch with the Cavs strength and conditioning staff and got in the gym and put on like 20 pounds of muscle before the season started. And he's one of those guys who just works and works and works. And I said last year, I was like, Evan Mobley might have the worst touch of anyone in the NBA. But I also said earlier this season, you don't need touch if you're just dunking on dudes. And he has been super aggressive on both ends, but offensively, he's been a matchup nightmare. Like you can't hide you know, Derek White on him anymore. He will punish that guy in the post and probably dunk on them. So, excited for him to get his recognition. It would be interested to see if we redrafted that draft of Cade or Mobley would go first, knowing what we know now. But excited for both of them to definitely be in contention and probably make it.
Well, yeah, and in terms of one of the other awards that we haven't discussed yet, I know the most improved player, we hear Cade's name tossed out a bunch. Is that a name that you're going with when you're penciling in that award, or who do you have bringing that one home?
Yeah, I can't get there with Cade, and not because I don't love Cade. Cade was the number one overall pick. I have a hard time giving Most Improved Player of the Year award to a guy who is the top pick and is just doing what we expected them to do. If I had to pick a Most Improved Player, I would go with Christian Brown of the Nuggets. There's a lot of concern coming into the season from Nuggets fans and people who follow the league of losing Contavious Caldwell Pope and you know Brown's not the shooter that KCP is or was. Rough season in Orlando for the former Laker, but Christian Brown has become a very important player for the Denver Nuggets. I mentioned earlier how there's no D in Michael Porter Jr. There's also, no D in Jamal Murray, and that leaves a lot of it to Christian Brown. Any sort of smaller wing to guard player, Christian Brown is guarding that guy all night long. Christian Brown is also second in the NBA in fast break points. I heard that during one of the last two Nuggets games, and I was kind of surprised about that. But it makes sense. Jokic loves looking for him on the hit it head pass, and he's super aggressive in transition.
Yeah.
And he makes all of us white boys proud when he goes up and dunks on people. So I gotta go with Christian Brown. How about you?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, our defensive player of the year discussion was not the last time we were going to be talking about Dyson Daniels, and
Mm,
pour some out for the Pelicans. where they traded for DeJounte Murray and appear to have got the worst player. Um,
Even before the injury too.
right. Yeah. The production of Dyson Daniels has been ridiculous. It's kind of shocking looking back on Dyson's stats from last year when he was on the Pelicans. It's shocking that they didn't try to utilize him more. And because if you look at his defensive stats in proportion to his minutes played, they were pretty much just as good as they are this season. His
Hmm.
like per 36 stats were right on par with what we're seeing out of him this year. But his jump in points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, we're talking about over 100% increases in pretty much every statistical category that matters, if not more in a few of those categories. So, and not only is he statistically outputting better numbers, but we've seen over the course of the year him start to take on more usage rate when
Hmm.
Jalen Johnson goes down. He's now pretty much the second ball handler on that team. So his playmaking ability has drastically improved. I've got to take Dyson as my most improved player, though I am going to give a quick shout out to Nick Swanson's favorite mid player in the NBA, Austin Reeves, for not only his improvement over the course of the season, but just looking at his production since the All Star break and since Luka came to the team. Really, he's had to find a new niche to work in, and he's done so seamlessly. It definitely helps that the two primary defenders from every team are guarding LeBron and Luka, and leaves Reeves on an island with the likes of Fred VanVleet. But when there's so much usage being taken by Luka and LeBron, it's very impressive how Reeves has been able to continue to produce and actually produce more and more efficiently than he ever has in his career. So tip of the cap there, but the Great Barrier Thief is taking it home for me.
Yeah. Daniels increased his scoring production from 5 points a game with the Pelicans to 14 with the Hawks. Brown increased his from 7 last year to 15 points a game this year. Reeves only increased his scoring average from 15, almost 16 a game, to 20 a game this year. But, I think that's a situation where the numbers don't tell the whole story. It looks
Yeah,
different. That dude is cold, man. I would not want to be on
he's
the island guarding
nasty.
him because he's got a lot of he's got a lot of spice to his game.
Mm-hmm.
That if you're not completely locked in, he's gonna make you look bad.
There's another stat on him that I heard the other day. He is the third undrafted player ever in NBA history to average 20 points in a
Mm.
season, and it's fun to watch.
I think we could talk about the Lakers all night between Luca and them being your team. But let's go to probably the most interesting non-MVP award in Coach of the Year. And there, if we were having a hard time coming up with like a deserving Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year is completely opposite. Coach of the Year, you could go so many different directions. Like I think you could make an argument in a normal year that the coaches of both of our teams, JJ Redick and Joe Mazzulla, deserve, some Coach of the Year love. And they're not going to sniff the award this year.
No,
Um, you have Mark Dagnall, who won 68 games with the OKC Thunder. And I don't think he's even going to make the top three. It's just crazy how many good coaches and coaching jobs there have been this year. And then the Nuggets fired their coach with 3 games remaining. It's just one of those things that pops into your head when you're thinking about the league. But to kind of lay out the candidates, we have Kenny Atkinson, who has transform the Cavs into a legitimate contender. Like we thought they would be good. We didn't think they would be second team in the league, vying for the best record in the league, looking like a legitimate championship contender good. We have JB Bickerstaff in Detroit. Detroit won 14 games last year. They had a 30-game improvement over a season with basically the same roster. Then you have Ime Udoka, and I think he may probably get squeezed out the third because it's a 2-year job that Ime's done,
yeah,
kind of transforming the Rockets. But Ime is such a good coach, and he has taken this super young Rockets team with an interesting roster composition and turn them into the second seed in this insane Western Conference.
Yeah.
So he definitely deserves, some consideration. But I think it probably boils down to Atkinson and Bickerstaff. Make the argument for Kenny Atkinson as Coach of the Year.
I think the main case you have for Atkinson is obviously just the way that the team played this year in comparison to how they played last year. Like I know we talked about at the beginning of the season that there was some injuries on that roster last year that definitely hurt them, but the roster is not that much different than it was
Mhm.
last year. I mean, we're pretty much talking about the same guys getting minutes. The way that he has transformed them offensively into a certified juggernaut, we talked about this before too, that any given night, I feel like I'm opening up the box score of a Cavs game to see three different players scoring 20 plus points. It's kind of hurt their cases for some of these, end of year awards like all NBA teams. I think, I think Mitchell's going to make one of the rosters just because of how they finished, but he doesn't have the counting stats of a all NBA player. But it's a testament to how well Atkinson has gotten them to play together as a unit that pretty much everybody on that roster on a given night could score 20 points. Hunter has had 20-point games. Allen's had plenty of 20-point games. Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, Ty Jerome. He's had multiple 20-point games this season.
Multiple
Um,
30-point games.
yeah. So the the way that he has turned them into a team that if you take away one option, you're getting beat by another one is really cool to see. I mean, you talked about the games one jump for the Pistons. That there's a pretty massive gap between this year and last year for the Cavs too, especially when you're talking about a team that was a top five team last year in their conference. The fact that there's
Mhm.
still that big of a wins gap one season to the next is pretty remarkable. So I think he's got it in my book. It's not often that you get multiple 15 game winning streaks in a season as well. Just, the ability to show up every single game and perform means that those types of streaks, I always attribute more to coaching than anything else because you know that there's going to be games that guys show up and they're not perfectly locked in over the course of a 15 game stretch. But if you're able to still pull off those games, that means that your game plan, your ability to adjust based on how players are performing to start games, that's a testament to how good of a coaching job he's done.
Yeah, for sure. Last year the Cavs won 48 games. This year they won 64 games. That may not be numerically as big of a jump than what Detroit did last year, but to go from a 48 win team to a 64 win team is honestly, and I might be showing my hand a little bit with this, way more impressive. Like that is a change in ceiling. That is like you are playing in a different sandbox at that point. You are going from like, welterweight to you are in the heavyweight class now. You are going up against the big boys. And that, is extremely impressive. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year that top four offenses in the NBA were the Cavs, the Celtics, the Thunder, and the Nuggets, I would have been shocked by that. And yet, the Cleveland Cavaliers had the best offensive rating of any team in the NBA. I thought they were going to blow it up. I did not think this was sustainable. I didn't think this was going to be a good offense because I didn't think that between Allen and Mobley not really being floor spacers that they were going to be able to be that good of an offense. I thought they were going to be a defensive juggernaut that struggled to like score, and instead it was not the opposite, but their offense was off the charts amazing.
The thing that puts them over the top, in my opinion, is the fact, like you mentioned with Cade, that there's expectations for growth
Hmm.
with both the Pistons and the Rockets. There were
Yeah.
big expectations for growth because they've had a couple years with those coaches at this point. So now they're getting to understand the system, and the teams are so young. Obviously, the coaching has a pretty sizable impact there as well. You're not making 30 game leaps in your record by just having guys have natural player progression.
Yeah.
But we expected some of that. 14 games is pretty hard to not improve on.
Yeah, I think if you're making the case for JB Bickerstaff, that's what it is right there. It's the insane jump in win-loss total. I think uh, I read that they are the first team in NBA history to triple their win total from the previous season. Now, you just made the point that 14 games is about as low as you can get. They set the NBA record for the longest losing streak. It's very clearly a major indictment on how bad of a job Monty Williams did because I thought the Pistons were going to kind of push for a play-in spot last year, and then they went out and lost every game. And
Yeah.
Monty Williams was consistently playing Killian Hayes over Jaden Ivey and just doing some of the most bizarre lineup decisions and whatever it was Monty Williams was doing with that insane amount of money he got. And Bickerstaff's come in. And it's funny that Bickerstaff leaves the Cavs. They make that jump, but yet he goes to the Pistons and they also make a jump. There's a certain amount of like poetic irony there.
Yeah.
But if I'm picking coach of the year, it's Kenny Atkinson. Like he has turned basically this entire team into a real contender that I thought they were DOA. I thought one of the guards was getting traded, maybe one of the bigs was getting traded, and they were going to reset and try and rebuild. But here we are. They're the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. I wouldn't have believed it if you told me. And we knew Kenny Atkinson was a good coach when he made D'Angelo Russell an all-star and a competent NBA player. I guess we should have seen this coming. All right. So the last award, Jordan, and this is the one that everyone has been waiting for because this is the one that has been discussed more than any award by talking heads, NBA insiders, casuals on the street. Most valuable player. Very clearly, there are two candidates. And that's it. You have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and you have Nikola Jokic. Give me the case for Shai.
Well, I think like you mentioned earlier, I think we can start off the conversation with the fact that Joker is the best basketball player on planet Earth. I think we both agree on that point. And it's worth making very clear that that is a fact. I think that Shea has a fantastic case for MVP for a few reasons. One, the award has historically gone to the best player on the best team when that best player is outputting ridiculously good statistical output. And he is.
Yeah,
He's the leading scorer in the league, which is oftentimes enough to get you the MVP even when you're not on the best team in the NBA. But he is
right.
on the best team in the NBA and it's not close. Not only that, but he's putting out that scoring output in like 3 quarters of play. I'm sure
Yeah.
most people at this point have seen the stats that he's the number 3 scorer in the NBA if you took away his fourth quarter points, which just shows how dominant OKC has been. But not only those things, he's also ridiculously efficient. His
Hmm.
field goal percentage from the 10 to 15 foot range is almost tops in the NBA. I'm pretty sure the only person that's more efficient on the volume that they're shooting is Giannis. KD is up there as well, but these are all people that we talk about as being some of the most efficient from the close to mid range in the NBA. His 3 point percentage has taken a massive jump from last year, and his 3 point shot volume has also taken a pretty significant uptick. And then, obviously the main argument that everybody has been giving that's anti-Shea is that he's a free throw hunter. And frankly, it's just
Free throw
ridiculous.
merchant.
Yeah, he's the free throw merchant. It's just, I don't know. It just feels like a silly argument to me. You point to pretty much any of the guards that have won MVP in the last like 2 decades have averaged more free throws per game than Shea has, with the exception of Steve Nash. But MJ was averaging more free throws per game. Kobe was averaging more free throws per game. Harden was averaging more free throws per game. all these guys who we definitely put Harden into the free throw merchant category. But when we're talking about Kobe, when we're talking about MJ, free throw merchant is not the label we put on those guys. And they were averaging more free throws per game than Shai is. I'm sorry that he shoots 91% from the free throw line, and thus his points from the free throw line are higher than theirs was. But that's not because he's getting to the line more. Also, it shouldn't really be a knock on someone that he consistently puts defenses in terrible positions. That's kind of the job of the offensive player, is to put them in terrible positions. And it's not like he's doing all the, you know, rip the ball into somebody's body moves that James Harden was doing and getting calls for, and Trae Young was doing and getting calls for the last
Hmm.
few seasons before they made some changes to that rule. These are legitimate plays where his footwork and his skill are getting him most, if not all, of his calls. So I think that piece is silly. And then we can just put some icing on the cake that he is still the top scorer in the NBA when you take away made free throws. So the pointing to this as being like, oh, all he does is shoot free throws. If it was all he was doing, it's because he's obliterating people and they have no choice but to foul because he's put them in such terrible positions. He just makes everybody look silly. And he's still scoring more points than everybody else away from the free throw line. And then the other piece that I will add to it that I think is a very strong distinction from Joker is his impact on the defensive end. His ability to guard one on one and switch anywhere from point guards to pretty big small forwards or even some of your stretch fours and be a top defender is something that Joker does not have in his back pocket. I believe the statistic is that he's the number 5 efficiency player on the defensive end in the league and number 2 in offensive efficiency behind Joker. Um,
Yeah.
but Joker is nowhere close to being a top 5 defensive efficiency player. And I think not only do we see that SGA puts up the numbers defensively. Like he gets his steals, he gets his deflections. He's a very efficient defender, and we see the impact that that makes at a team wide level. You talked about earlier that Jokic is rebounding. You know, you got to rebound to end possessions. That we don't want to discount that, but the disruptiveness of SGA on the defensive end is something that Joker does not have and is certainly undervalued when we're talking about this discussion. Most of the discussion is talking about all the crazy counting stats that Joker has put up this year, or the offensive efficiency of the Nuggets when he's on the court versus when he's off the court. But their defensive efficiency doesn't really change when he's off the court, which I think is a pretty big knock on him that we haven't heard talked about much.
To mention those crazy stats, here's the case for Jokic: 29.8 points a game, 12.8 rebounds, 10.3 assists. No player in NBA history has been in the top 10 in points, rebounds, assists, and steals per game. Jokic isn't in just the top 10, he's in the top three, being second in rebounds and second in assists. And you mentioned how bad the Nuggets are. I think part of like the defensive shortcomings come with the fact that not only is Jokic out there, I've mentioned this. Apparently, this is the theme of the pod. He's out there with Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, and those guys are worse defenders than me. And if you've ever played basketball with me, you know I'm not a good defender. That's going to be tough as the last line of defense when they're just getting blown by, and they're very difficult blow-bys. But the big thing is when Jokic is on the court, the Nuggets have the best offense in NBA history. When Jokic is off the court, the Nuggets have the worst offense in the modern NBA history. And I mean, as good as Shea is, as good as poor as Jokic can be defensively, that is just insanity. And I've been thinking about MVP for probably 2 months now. I'm a huge Jokic guy. like I've just been watching Denver probably more than the Celtics, honestly, down the stretch because I was like, what is going on? Where are they going to end? And to me, it came down to what happened today. The Nuggets are the 4 seed. The Nuggets are tied with the Lakers in the win column with 50 wins. As bad as the rest of the roster is, the burden that Jokic carries is um is just insane. Like he had a 61 point triple double. He had a 30-20-20 game. Like who is it? Cam Johnson on the Young Man in 3 pod was talking about just he's like, I don't get those kind of stats in a week, and he does it in one game. And like, guys in the NBA are just marveling at what he does. And it's not like you know, it's funny, DeAndre Jordan is his backup teammate because when he was in Dallas, he was very much known for chasing those rebounds to get his rebounding average up. But Jokic doesn't do that. He is just out there trying to make winning plays. Um, you know, I I don't want to fully discredit Shay's case because I think it is actually legitimate. I've been watching a lot of the Thunder too because I was like, why wasn't Tatum getting this love last year when the Celtics were far and away the best team? It's worth noting, just to state the numbers, as tough as the Western Conference was, the Oklahoma City Thunder won the Western Conference by 16 games. Like it wasn't even close.
Yeah,
As competitive as it was, they ran away with the conference. And yes, the team's crazy deep, the team's great, but is there another All NBA guy on that team? Probably not. I mean,
no.
Jalen Williams might get in third team just with, team performance. They're
But he
really
was a
just like,
he was a fringe all-star.
yeah. Like really his only case for that is because so many other guys are ineligible. Luca, KD, like the list goes on. AD, Kyrie, all these guys being ineligible who would be surefire all NBA picks would be the only reason he gets in.
Right.
And then you watch the games and I mean Jokic controls the offense like no one I've ever seen. Maybe LeBron at his like peak, but I don't even know if peak LeBron was controlling every single possession. They just get Jokic touches and there's like
Yeah.
a pitch to Jokic and a pitch back and just like everything revolves around him, which in a way in which LeBron never had, where it's just like the ball was always in his hands. I mean, it was in his hands a lot, but not in the same kind of way. With that said, that like you look at the team and Murray's missed a lot of time. Porter Jr.'s missed some time, but Porter Jr.'s actually been really good this year, and I
Been
think in
solid.
large part because of he Jokic does everything for him. He makes the game so easy for him. And if we're making a pick, I think it has to be Nikola Jokic. I will kind of walk that back a little bit and say I wouldn't be mad if we had co-MVPs. That would like looking at this season, if we're Bill Simmons' book of basketball, looking at this season in 30 years, co-MVPs with Shea and Jokic would feel right. Do you agree with that?
I wouldn't feel terrible about it. Um, with how dominant OKC has been, like it feels, and what I mentioned earlier, that the kind of season Shea has had is one that would be an MVP candidate in a year where he wasn't on the number one team in the entire NBA.
For
But
sure.
the fact that this incredibly deep Western Conference, he is almost 20 games. I think he's 19 games ahead of the second place MVP vote getter in Joker.
18, but yeah, it's pretty dang close.
That's an insane amount of games gap to be talking about. It feels like the precedent of the award points to Shea. Uh, like we said, Joker is the better basketball player. I don't doubt that for a second. And you know what? He might be the more valuable basketball player to his team. But the way that this award has been given out historically, and it's hard to, we can't discredit the amount of attention that Shea gets on that team, because it's I mean, if you look at the roster makeup, I'd take the Cavs roster. I take the Boston roster. I'd probably
Hmm.
take the Lakers roster over the OKC roster, just in terms of like individual pieces. But the way that that team works together, and the reason it works together is because it's revolving around Shai.
Yeah.
I've got to give him the nod for this season, and call it bias of being tired of giving the award to Joker if you want. I wouldn't be too upset with a co MVP, but let's give Shai his flowers.
Yeah, I was very staunchly for a while. Jokic has to be the MVP. This is ridiculous. We're even considering Shea, but I've come around on it. It's hard not to. He's had a very impressive season. I think it. I would pick Jokic, but I wouldn't be mad at Shea. He's had a great year. All right, Jordan. Well, we've covered just about everything
That went a
that we
little
can
longer
cover
than we intended.
for awards. Let's get out of here. Like the Western Conference, keep your ankle braces tighter than 2 through 7 or 2 through 8. Are we still counting Memphis as part of the elite? Memphis is kind of falling off. My Memphis Kool-Aid, I think, spoiled and might make me sick if I keep drinking it. So let's pour that out. Keep your ankle braces tighter than the West 2 through 7. And keep your friends even tighter than that. Adios, amigos.